Just like to offer a big shout out to Touchdown Digital, the sponsor of this week's video.
Well, hello everybody, Glenn Samuel here from Sniper Photography. Thank you for joining me today. Now, look, today I want to talk to you about a few things, mainly about the psychology of photography, especially landscape photography, and a few things that I think are very, very important if you're really serious about your craft and the art of landscape photography. Now, there's various things that we need to think of when we're out in the landscape. How do we copy what Mother Nature's put before us on that particular day? Now, there's various things that you can use mentally to create or to make that happen. Now, first thing off the bat, a lot of people say, and even I say it, that camera gear is not really important. Well, it is important to a point. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't matter what camera, what brand, how old it is, how new it is, how expensive it was when you first brought the camera. That's got nothing to do with it. It's more about you knowing how to use the camera that you have. This is when gear is important, that you know how to use your equipment. And I think that is so important. So yes, camera equipment is important, but you've got to know how to use it. Doesn't matter what it is, you need to know your camera. So if you're new to this landscape photography thing, or you've been in it for a little while, but you feel like you're struggling a bit, well then maybe this video is for you. So with your equipment, don't fuss on what you haven't got or what you wish you had, because that's not going to simply make you a better photographer, and it certainly won't create better images. So the camera you have, make sure you know how to use it and use it properly. You should be able to look away from the camera like that, look away from it, and be able to turn dials and move switches and buttons without even having to look at it. That's what I call knowing your camera. So getting to know your gear is very important. So I thought I'd clear that up straight away. Now, the next thing really that you really need to get your head around is light. Now, light is everything. We tend to, or you should be using light to direct the viewer when they're looking at your image that you've just created. So the understanding of light and what it means to your photography is, I think, number one. There is no doubt. You can talk about composition, you can talk about focusing, pinpoint sharpness, but without the light and the correct use and the understanding of light, all that other stuff doesn't matter. So getting to know light and how to work the scene with the light that you have is critical to your success, really, as a landscape photographer. Now, I've often heard other photographers say, oh, the light wasn't right that day. Well, there's no such thing as bad light in photography. What there is, though, is bad compositional choices. So it's not nature that's causing the problem. I think it's the person holding the camera. Now, if you don't understand light and the properties of light, the strengths of light, the direction of light, and how to work the scene according to the light that you have, well, then you will struggle. You will struggle, there's no doubt about that. So understanding light is paramount to your success as a landscape photographer. There is just no doubt about that. In actual fact, I will suggest that you make light your friend. I treat light like one of my children. I love light. I tend to look after it and I know how to work with it. So make light your friend, a very close friend, because if you can do that, well then you're on your way to creating some beautiful images from where you are now up to the next level. So understanding light is critical with your landscape photography. The next thing is to have the mindset that when you walk into a scene or you're in the landscape, I think it's very important that you think before you do anything else. Don't set up the tripod, don't set up the camera, leave it in your bag, leave it on the ground, and just go into the landscape which you're wishing to photograph and have a good look around. There's two things that we all have, there's two pieces of equipment that we all have that costs us nothing, and that's our eyes and our brain. These two work together when you're out in the landscape. So you actually, how this works, you look at the landscape that you want to photograph and you think about how you want to capture it or represent what you're actually seeing. Now, this is a thinking process. This is a psychological aspect of it, and it's very, very important that you grasp this if you want to be successful and create really great images. So look around, look all around. I mean, you're a photography detective. You've arrived on site, you've arrived at the scene, and you're looking for clues. So when you're looking around, look at things at the grand landscape. Now, a lot of people that are new to landscape photography get overwhelmed by the grandness of it. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to the Canadian Rockies or the Grand Tetons or Yellowstone National Park in the United States or parts of Canada. These scenes are massive. They're just grand. But the idea is to wait for the right light and pick certain parts of such a grand landscape, because it can be overwhelming for a lot of people, especially people that are fairly new to photography, landscape photography. They just get overwhelmed by this whole scene. And that's something you don't want to do. You can appreciate it, but you don't really want to waste a lot of that foreground. So I suggest you look at the scene and then get your brain working from what your eyes have just seen and look at parts of this landscape, because you'll often see that you'll see a lot of photographers in one location and they're taking the same photograph. I suggest you move away from there, right, and go and photograph a part of the scene that everyone's trying to capture, because you will come away with far superior images, far better photographs, and it's something different. So the idea is to go into the landscape and have a good look around, find out what you want to photograph, get your brain working on how you want to photograph it, how you want to represent parts of that grand vista. So use your eyes and your brain. Two things that we all have, which cost us nothing. So another thing that I think we really should concentrate on, and in this day and age, people, especially the young people, especially school-aged children, or young people that play sport, is to accept failure. To be good at anything, you have to accept failure, because when you fail, it's not the end. It's just the beginning of your journey of learning. So appreciate failure for what it is and learn from your mistakes. Learn from the failures. I mean, you know, you've got school-aged children that go to school and they get 25 out of 100 and they get a pass. That's not good for them, and it's certainly not good for us photographers if we take a photograph and you know it's not the best, but you accept that. So you really don't want to accept anything that's mediocre with your photography, because at the end of the day, you've spent a lot of money, a lot of time. You've probably spent time away from family and loved ones. You've traveled, you've spent a lot of money on fuel. Why not get the best possible shot you can? So embrace failure and learn from it. It's so important that you do that, because you will grow as a photographer and you will learn if you accept your failures. Another thing is when you go into a scene, you're in the landscape, you must have a 360-degree visual view or aspect of it. And if you see a scene which is absolutely fantastic, it's up to you to give it everything you've got to photograph that scene the way you see it. Try not to make it something that it isn't. which leads on to the editing situation. You need to give it everything you've got, everything that you know. You own the moment. You have to own what's in front of you. Mother Nature has given you, has allowed you to come into the lounge room, and you have to give it everything you've got to make that clear, crisp representation of the image that you've just photographed that Mother Nature has given you. We're very lucky, us human beings, as to be able to photograph these most magnificent areas. It doesn't matter whether it's in your own street or 100 kilometres away or 50 miles away or overseas. We're very, very fortunate. And as photographers, we have a duty to represent what Mother Nature has given us. So give it everything you've got, everything that you know, and make sure that that image really resonates with the people that are probably going to look at it. So give it everything you've got. Now, another thing that which I often speak about, and that's printing. I think printing is in the top 10 of what photographers should be doing. Once again, as I said earlier, you spent lots and lots of money, lots of time, you've put a big effort in, only to have your images stuck on a computer or in a Lightroom catalogue or on a hard drive somewhere or even on an SD card. I just cannot see the benefit of that. I believe printing is a surefire way of improving your photography, because what happens is you have a mindset. Once again, it's all about the mind. You go out in the landscape, you've done everything right. The light's perfect. You've done everything and everything's ready to go, and you take a magnificent image, a magnificent photograph. But who's going to see it? I mean, you know, if you're happy to leave it stored away on a computer somewhere, well, I'm happy for you. But over time, you tend to forget what's in that catalogue, what's on the hard drive. Now, I'm not suggesting you go out and print everything that you photograph. Print only your best. And I'm not necessarily saying you have to have hundreds of picture frames around your house or your home. Just print out a couple every now and again. I suggest to people, if they're starting to get into printing, you either buy your own printer, which ranges from $800 up to sky's the limit. It's the ink that is the dear part with printing, or find a good lab. Now, even if you just print 6 to 8, maybe 6 to 10 images a year, that's enough. Because you will find that when you're out on site and you've got everything ready to go, as I said, you've done everything possible, you're going to give it everything you've got, knowing full well that this image is going to be printed large, A3 plus, even bigger, well then that actually forces you to get everything correct. So if you have that mindset when you go out, even though you're not going to print, pretend you're going to print the image, well then your photography has to improve. There's no doubt about that. So start printing your images. It's a must, I believe. It's the final piece of the photography puzzle, printing your images. Now, another thing is research. I'm an avid researcher. In actual fact, I haven't been out with my camera for about 3 weeks now due to, I had to have surgery on the 15th of August. It's been about 3 weeks ago. I've been stuck at home. I can't even pick up the camera bag. I had a emergency hernia operation, which has set me back probably 6 to 8 weeks. So that's slowed me down. But during this time of me being laid up with surgery, I've been planning another overseas holiday, which encompasses Iceland, Manitoba, Churchill, which is the polar bear capital of the world. I'm going over there on a polar bear expedition, and then into Utah, Wyoming, Montana, Yellowstone National Park, Grand Tetons, Jackson Hole, things like that. That's next year. So I've been planning that. But planning is important with your photography, because with planning, you cut down on the waste of time, or time that you could possibly waste. There's nothing worse than going out to a location and it's just off the cuff that I think I'll do well here. And you can get lucky, there's no doubt about that. We can all be lucky. But planning is I think, a factor that you must consider. Because also too, planning will dictate what lenses you need to take. Now, a couple of months ago, I did a video on lenses that I use. And when I plan to go out, I already know what lenses I need just by looking at Google Earth and things like that, just doing your planning. So planning is important because it cuts down a lot of wasted time. And there's nothing worse than going out on location because you haven't planned and you think, oh, geez, I really should have brought my 70-200, or I really should have brought my 24mm lens or my 14mm ultra wide, and you've only got a 70-200 or vice versa. So there's nothing worse than having the wrong lens with you on the day because you haven't taken the time out to plan. So planning is very, very important indeed. It's super important that you plan well in advance before you go out. So last thing, I think, basically to recap, you just have to get your mind around the subject. Now, with my commercial work, I do a lot of portrait photography, and once it's set up. I set up my strobes, set up flash units, umbrellas, and so on, and that's it. It's done and dusted. But I've got to get to know the subject, which is the person. Now, it could be a CEO of a major company. I do a bit of research on this person, and I talk to them while I'm photographing, and it relaxes them. So how do we use that in our landscape photography? Well, it's very, very simple. When you go out into the landscape, let it come to you, okay? Let the landscape come to you. You have to feel the moment. Remember I said you've got to own the moment? So make sure you feel what you're photographing. Just let it all come in. And that's why I said earlier, don't set up as soon as you get there. Walk around and let it come to you. Let it come to you, because 9 times out of 10 we're there by ourselves, So just walk around and let it come to you. And you'll find that if you can get this mindset, this is what it's all about. It's about up here. If you can get your head around all this, I think you'll find that your photography will improve without a doubt. There's no doubt about that. And this is what I teach. I've been doing this for over 4 decades. And when I'm a guest speaker at camera clubs throughout New South Wales, this is what I talk about. Very rarely do I talk about equipment. On equipment, most people, the first question they ask me is, oh, what camera do you use? Well, I use a 5D Mark IV. That's good enough for me. It's a brute of a camera. It's a beast. It's been knocked around like you wouldn't believe, and it still performs brilliantly. I won't be selling it anytime soon. I actually love the 5D Mark IV, even the older 5D Mark III. I do use filters, but that's it. That's all I do. So basically, I don't really talk about the cameras that I use. I don't think that's all that important. It's more the psychological aspects with your equipment that transforms into good images. So, interesting subject this. Yeah, just let me know what you think. Do you think about your photography when you're out there on site? Let me know. Let me know. If you want any more information, you can contact me on various ways here. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to read your comments. Thank you for supporting this channel. It means a lot to me. I really appreciate the comments. So that's it for another episode of Sniper Photography. I hope you enjoy this one. So as I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends, but most of all, you keep shooting, keep smiling. Bye for now.